Orpah and Ruth were in the exact same circumstance. They were from the same country. Their predicament was the same. They were obviously contemporaries. And apart from that, their preacher was the same. It was the same service they attended. At the end of that service, the same sermon, it wasn't one aside. Naomi, Ruth, one aside, Naomi, Orpah. No, they were members of the congregation at the same time. They heard the same sermon. The sermon that pushed Orpah back to Moab was the same sermon that Ruth heard and became a grandmother of Jesus. It was that same sermon. That same sermon. The same preacher. Their circumstances as Ruth and Orpah were the same. They were young widows, childless, and Moabitish. There was nothing that that Naomi predicted about what would befall Orpah in Judah that was not meant to be the same thing that would befall Ruth in Judah. But while Ruth went forward, Orpah went backwards. So don't always blame it on your preacher. It is not every time. It's not always that you are going to get the best of preachers. No. Sometimes your encouragers will become your discouragers. It was the Elijah that Elisha was to inherit that consistently told Elisha to go back. Say, wait for me here. Elisha said, as long as the Lord God liveth, as long as your soul liveth, nothing is going to separate me from you. It's okay. I'm going now to Jericho. He said, we go. Okay. I'm going to Jordan. We are going. Do you know the risk of crossing that Jordan with Elijah? When you know that you are going to have to do it alone on your return trip. Because everybody has started telling Elisha, do you know that today the Lord is going to take your servant, your master, away from your head? Elisha was supposed to inherit Elijah. That was what God told Elijah when Elijah was handing to God his resignation letter. They told him to go anoint 3 people. Hazael, king over Israel, Jehu, king over Judah, and Elisha, prophet in your stead. And they said, anyone that escapes the sword of Jehu, the sword of Hazael, will catch up with him. And anyone that escapes the sword of Hazael, the sword of Elisha, will catch up with him. Of the 3 persons, Elijah, the faintest attempt he made was Elisha. Elijah did not anoint Hazael. Elijah did not anoint Jehu. And even the Elisha that he wooed a little bit, he now stood like a rock of offense when it was time for Elisha to enter into that inheritance. And Elisha could have gone back. I said, I tried my best. It was my master that said I should go back. Some of the most beautiful words were those that came out of the mouth of Ruth here. And I love the way she ended it. She understood the ramification. She knew that this was more about gods than it was about goods. She had heard from a distance the melody of the songs of Zion. She may not have been able to put words yet to the tune, but as it wafted through her spirit, there was something wooing her. She had heard the distant songs of Zion. Something beckoned upon her soul. It is the voice of my beloved coming upon the mountain, skipping, leaping upon the hills. Like a roe and a young hart, he stands behind our wall, showing himself through the lattice. My beloved spake and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. When you have heard that sermon, nothing in this world would satisfy. You'd realize in your own experience that indeed Jesus It's a cup that won't run dry. Oh, may we hear afresh the songs of Zion. Even in the midst of our calamities, in the midst of chaos. I know that Nigeria is a difficult place to live now, but there is still an orchestra in Zion, and it plays the tune of your destiny. If only your ears will be open, you would realize that calculating by the permutations of men will not always give you the outcome that destiny has ordained for you. Sometimes you need to take the risk of believing in God. And I dare to say to you, that is a risk to take at all times. I dare you. Be like Ruth. Ruth decided to go into Israel. The only thing that was guaranteed was God. I may not get a husband. I may not get any more children. I may not get a fellowship to join, but your God will be my God. Ultimately, that is it. And when the lady was willing to settle for God, she suddenly realized that all other things were added unto her. Those that want to have all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted before they take that step, I'd like you to know that it is not a step of faith anymore. If all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted, before you take this step, it's not a step of faith. And we walk by faith and not by sight. How did Ruth survive where Orpah collapsed? What was it? What did God do to that lady's heart? What kind of heart did she bring? It's the heart of a cleaver. Like, I made this decision and I'm in need for life. That's the heart. It's that heart. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Where you are buried, I'll be buried. Your God, above all else, your God will be my God. This is my permanent bye-bye to Chemosh. Yes, it is. The things I've heard, if it is true that that is who Yahweh is, I want to explore. And I'd like you to know that in the midst of everything that you have heard, there are still adventures to be had in Zion. There are still adventures. I may not be able to promise you a husband. I may not be able to promise you a wife. But I can tell you without missing words, there are still adventures to be had in Zion. There are still adventures. And when a man makes God his chief pursuit, he suddenly realizes that God is enough. You suddenly realize that God is enough. Brother, God is enough. God is enough. God is enough. There are heights of love that I may not reach. There are depths of joy that I may not know till I cross the narrow sea. I'd like for you to know that there is a lot that you will not know until you take the plunge. There's so much that you will not know until you take the plunge. And when you take that plunge in response to the beckonings of the one that dwells in the midst of fire, you would realize that God is incapable of unreliability. God cannot be unreliable. When a man has decided to trust God, when a lady has decided to commit the keeping of her soul to the shepherd, the God of the spirits of all flesh, you are going to realize that you will have both time and eternity thrown into one bundle for you. In time and in the world to come, you would notice that nobody loses by saying yes to Jesus.